Alright, hello and welcome. So today we are talking about only in anime moments. Now, you're probably wondering what the fuck that even means, and I totally get you. So, let me briefly explain. So basically, an only in anime moment is basically like a scene in an anime where somebody does something or something happens that is so ridiculously absurd that it couldn't really exist outside of the realm of anime. Like, it can't really exist in other media, right? So that's what I mean when I say an only in anime moment. So I'm just gonna start talking about my 5 favorite only in anime moments, starting off with an old school classic of Naruto. Now, Naruto is a great anime. It's about, Fox Boy doing Fox Boy things, trying to become Hokage someday. And specifically, we're going to talk about the part 1. The main thing that I'm talking about with Naruto is obviously his greatest jutsu that he ever invented. The one that has a success rate so high that, there's nobody that can even compete with it. And it's honestly down to some of the strongest shinobi in the entire verse. And yes, I am talking about the sexy jutsu. So the sexy jutsu is a jutsu where Naruto transforms into sexy lady or sexy dude, depending on the person that he's transforming into, their personal preferences, right? So most of the time, because he's doing it to male characters, typically he is transforming into sexy lady. However, there is one occasion where he does transform into sexy dudes. I think he calls it the reverse harem jutsu. I think that's what he calls it. So this jutsu is incredibly successful. It's taken out Chunin, the likes of Iruka sensei. It's taken out Jonin, like Ebisu. It's even taken out a legendary Sannin in Jiraiya, and even a Hokage in my boy Hiruzen motherfucking Sarutobi, the professor himself, the known as God of Shinobi, before they kind of rewrote that and kind of just made it Hashirama, and Hashirama's actually the God of Shinobi, even though Naruto actually becomes even stronger than him someday. But regardless, sexy jutsu puts Sarutobi Hiruzen on his ass, and it is the craziest, funniest thing ever. This is the most busted jutsu, I swear to God. And it is one of these jutsus that could literally only exist in anime. Like, I don't understand. This is like the silliest, most obscure moment in Naruto. Like, every other part of Naruto is like, sure, maybe a little bit goofy at times, but nothing reaches this peak of like goofiness and ridiculousness that the sexy jutsu has, where he's taken out Hokage, just really strong shinobi with such a joke jutsu. But anyway, enough of that one. Let's move on to our next one. Our next one is from Overlord. Now, Overlord, brief summary of that show is it's about a skeleton boy who gets isekai'd into a new world after his MMO RPG that he used to play called Yggdrasil is taken down, and he falls asleep while still logged in, and then he wakes up, and now he's his character, which is Skeleton Boy. He changes his name from Momonga to Ainzul Gon, which is the name of his guild, and then he has all of his guardians, which were NPCs made by his fellow guildmates. So he kind of uses them, and he starts to try and make a name for himself and hopes that maybe he'll someday find another player, right? So one of his guardians we're going to focus on today because she's very, very important for this scene. And so her name is Albedo. She's kind of the main guardian. She's like the head guardian who kind of like rules over the other guardians, and she's kind of like a main advisor to Ainzul Gon, or Ainz. And she is a succubus, so a demon that is of the naughty variety, right? So the scene that I want to talk about is one where she's kind of showing off this horse that she has. Specifically, it's called a bicorn, right? Different, not to be, confused with the unicorn, which is one horn. Bicorn has 2 horns. And so she's trying to ride this horse, and she's like get on top of it, and it's like trying to knock her off and the stuff, and so she can't really ride it. So she eventually gets off, and she's like confused, and everyone else is confused. The two people that she's trying to show off to, which are two other guardians, one named Aura, who's a small dark elf lady, and then the other one who is a small vampire lady known as Shaltir. So she's trying to show off to these two, and they're also confused. So Shaltir is like, oh, well, okay, I'm just gonna look up bicorns in this encyclopedia that I got from Ainz, right? So she opens up this encyclopedia that has all the monsters in it. So she looks up bicorns, and then when she finally looks up bicorns, she starts reading it off. Bicorns represent impurity, whereas unicorns represent purity. So in very obvious confusion, Shaltir and Aura look over at Albedo, and they're incredibly confused as to why she can't ride the horse, because she's a succubus, remember? And they're a demon of the naughty variety, so there's no way that this succubus could be a virgin, right? Wrong. She is, and she's like adorably embarrassed about it. And so she's just like, well, you know, Ainz never wants to get with me, because she's obsessed with Ainz. And so she's just like super embarrassed. They're both just like, what's wrong with you? You're a succubus, right? And it's just the absolutely funniest thing, because the concept in and of itself is so ridiculous. Like, imagine a virgin succubus existing in general. Like, that's just one of the silliest concepts I've ever seen. Anyway, enough of that. Let's move on to the next one. So the next one is actually a pretty new anime, and it's actually the one that kind of inspired me to like make this video in the first place, because of just absolutely ridiculous, or how funny and ridiculous this moment is, but how like overseen it is. So it's from an anime called Goodbye Dragon Life, and it's currently in season right now. And the basic premise of this show is the main character is a dragon who gets killed by humans, and then he actually reincarnates into a human. So after he reincarnates into a human, he then tries to live like a nice quiet life in this little quiet town and this quiet village off in the boonies, and he does have to fight some monsters just to protect the village, but other than that, he's kind of just learning how to be a human and how to like interact with humans. That's kind of the whole premise of the show. And there is this one woman in the village who is she's like a cow lady demi-human. So she's half human, half cow. And her like whole job in the village is to just produce milk for people in the village, which like initially you're just like, oh yeah, she's a cow lady. Of course, like she would provide milk to the village, right? That makes sense. Until you start to like really think about it, and you're like, well, where does the milk come from? And then you start putting two and two together, and you're like, oh, huh. That's when you realize that the milk is likely coming from her breasts. Like, it's probably just coming from her boobies. And so that in and of itself didn't really faze me all that much, to be perfectly honest. I had seen so much anime up to this point that like it didn't really faze me, oddly enough, until I saw like the very next episode when they finally like revealed that he is her husband. It's the captain of the guard. The captain of the guard is her husband. He is so proud of his wife and what she does for the village. And even then, it's just so wholesome and nice until you get to the point where you realize that he's challenging people to drinking competitions. And no, they're not drinking competitions for like alcohol. They're drinking competitions for milk, specifically his wife's milk, specifically his wife's breast milk. And so he's like obviously killing it, right? He's going off, just drinking the shit out of this milk, and nobody can beat him until this one girl shows up in the village, and she's from like this academy or something. Her name's Christina, right? And she's like, sure, why not? I'll challenge you, whatever, it's cool. And so they start doing their drinking competition, and she fucking wins. And I'm just like, bro, this needs to stop. I was like, this is the wildest concept. Everything else in this show has been so like pretty normal. Until you get to the fucking cow ladies just selling off their breast milk. And I was just like, dude, there is no way that this would ever go over in like any other type of media whatsoever. This has to be like only an anime moment, and that's what inspired me to even like think about other moments in other shows that are just so ridiculous and out there that like they couldn't exist anywhere else. Which brings me to my last one, and honestly probably my favorite one on this list. I didn't really do these in any particular order, but this one's probably my favorite one on the list just because it's one of my favorite shows, and it's involving one of my favorite characters in one of my favorite shows, and the show is called Eminence in Shadow. It's a very, very good isekai. If you haven't watched it, you should definitely check it out. A brief summary of the show is basically you have this main character whose name is Sid Kageno, and also known as Shadow, and he wants to be the eminence in Shadow. So he wants to be like an all-powerful person that is always acting in secret or in the shadows, right? That's kind of his whole goal. Now, while on his way to becoming this eminence of Shadow, he ends up inventing this cult called the Cult of Diablos, and their whole goal is to basically just bring back the demon Diablos. And so he ends up saving all these girls that were like failed experiments and stuff, and they really just have like some magical disease, and he ends up curing them because he's very good with magic. One of those girls being this girl Epsilon, who is probably my favorite character in the entire show. She is this blue-haired elf girl who is very self-conscious about her body. She's very specifically self-conscious about her boob size. Yes, we are talking about boobies again. But she's also like a very good musician and an excellent, like Shadow even mentions that she's probably got better magic control than anybody he knows. Like she's super good with her magic control. And so the scene that I think is the most ridiculous with her, which she has a lot of really funny scenes, but the most ridiculous one for her is they are in like a facility where their magic is being like drained from them kind of slowly. And so all of them wear these slime suits that is kind of stitched together through magic. You could probably guess where this is going. Yes, their clothes start being torn apart. And so Epsilon, who magically enhances her breast size with slime, her like fake boobs just plop onto the ground at one point, and both her and like two of her subordinates like look at them, and she's just like immediately like horrified, and it's so awkward. She like uses the slime that's like remaining to like pull them back onto her body, and then her subordinates are just silent this whole time, and she turns to them and she's like, did something happen? And they don't answer, and she just goes again, she's like, did something happen? And they're like, no ma'am, nothing happened, because they're just terrified if they admit that they saw it. So it's just the absolutely most ridiculous moment in the entire show. It's one of my favorite. The show is just covered with these moments that I think could only exist in anime because they're just so absolutely absurd. But this is by far my favorite moment and probably the most absurd one. Anyway, those are 5 of my favorite only in anime moments, things that just like could not exist in any other form of media, in my opinion. I want to know, like, do you have your own moments in anime that you think are absolutely ridiculous and out there? Let me know, because I would love to see more of these moments. It's one of my favorite things about anime is just the absolute ridiculous humor that they have. Anyway, that'll do it for today. So I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.